Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the What Worked For You show. Now, today we're going to talk real estate, but with a different spin, and that is not just remote investing, but internationally remote. Right now, it's already scary enough for a lot of people to do investing remote. Yeah, there's a lot of virtual wholesaling out there, but the reality is a lot of people don't succeed with it. Our guest today has not only gotten very good at remote investing, not just wholesaling, but flips as well, rentals and that sort of thing, which is a whole nother animal we'll dive into. He's doing it internationally. And not just from one country, he's done it from multiple countries. So we're going to get some unique perspectives today on this idea of remote investing, how to make it work, how to be successful with it, and how he's helping people make a difference, change their lives today. So that being said, Chad Bartlett, it is a pleasure to chat with you again. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Frank. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Let's dive in. Your journey from back in the college student days to now living remotely abroad for the last 7 years, and you've been investing for a long time. And when we met, you were still here in the States. So I was like, wow, it has been a minute. But yet you've been able to create enough income consistently through all of those changes to make that happen. So that shows grit, it shows clarity. How did you develop that in your earlier days of investing?
Early on, there was a lot of being naive of how many steps there are in the business. And I just put one step in front of the other with kind of this blinded idea that if so many other people in front of me had figured out how to make this successful, I could figure it out as well. My big goal was to spend more time with my family. And I knew working as a mechanic, I was working as a mechanic 60 plus hours. And I would come home and I wouldn't see my kids. It'd be bedtime by the time I got through the door. So I was willing to do whatever it took to change that. They say you either move towards pleasure or away from pain. And so from an emotional or a mental standpoint, that was the biggest part for me, was to know that it was possible.
Love it, love it.
From the strategy perspective of it,
Yeah.
it started off with I didn't have a lot. I really was almost check to check as a mechanic. And so, what really had a low barrier to entry to get started? And how could I do something that would bring money right away? And I feel fortunate enough that real estate crossed my path, and specifically wholesaling. Um, that's how I did it. Living in Alaska, trying to figure it out in Alaska was tough. The market was tough. Everything is more like high-end houses. And so early on, I had to get good at looking for opportunities outside of where I was, because I was not able to spot the opportunities in such a different market as Anchorage, Alaska was. So wholesaling was really the short answer to the key to me being able to do the things I'm able to do now. And being in Brazil now versus, living in Alaska, getting my first handful of deals in Kansas City, my first deals were remote, just out of necessity, just because I couldn't figure out my local market. And so what I'm doing now is a different form of how I started, but it's all virtual. And I like to give the comparison that it's kind of like if if my first car was a stick shift, no matter where I am, I can sit into a stick shift and drive it. But if I started off as as an automatic, it might be difficult to make the transition. All of my first deals were remote, and so I was blessed that I didn't know anything different.
I love it. Love it. You mentioned being the mechanic, someone that's now broken free from that 9 to 5 grind. And now not only are you doing the business, but you're also coaching people on flipping houses, doing what you do remotely, pursuing freedom. What's a quality you credit yourself with that helped you shift your path so dramatically? Because that's a dramatic shift for a lot of people.
Yeah. I feel like in the back of my mind, I was always meant to do something different. I actually just fell into mechanics because my car was breaking down all the time, and I felt like I was getting taken advantage of by the mechanic shop. And my personality was like, I got to figure this out. I'm tired of getting taken advantage of. And when I joined the army, that's what I was. I was a Humvee mechanic for a number of years, and I knew that that wasn't long term for me. Military life and mechanics. So I went to college after the army, and I did that for 4 years. I got my bachelor's in anthropology, and the whole time I'm earning my way through college, I'm working as a mechanic just to feed my family. But I think I just always had that in the back of my mind that I'm supposed to be doing something different. In college, when I graduated with a bachelor's in anthropology, is when I found out that you can't really do much with a bachelor's of anything, let alone anthropology. So to make that leap, it was just one, luck, two, desire, and three, the belief that I could do something different. And then just putting one foot in front of the other, I had to reach out. I read every book that I can get on real estate wholesaling. Um, I started off cheap. I used to get those books from the library in the Anchorage Public Library system, and I used to read those books for free. And then eventually I signed up to get some coaching because there was some gaps there that I couldn't get past, but I just was determined to make it work. And like I said before, I was naive enough to believe that I could do it. 6 months I started really, really passionately grinding and not one deal in sight, but it never crossed my mind to walk away. It never crossed my mind like, hey, this isn't working. You're half a year into this thing. And right at that 6 year mark, 6 month mark, is when things broke open for me and I got my first deal. And then that was it. That was game over. When I got that first deal, my wife brought the check to me at the mechanic's parking lot at my job, and she handed me the check. It came in the mail. And I just remember crying and holding it because I knew it was real now. I've seen other people do it, but for me, it was real. And I had that check. And if I
Mm.
could do one deal, I knew I could do hundreds, and I have. It was just breaking that barrier to get that first one done. And when that first one got done, the floodgates opened up.
So we're going to dive into that a little bit more because there's so many people that struggle with that first deal. And we've met them, you've met them, they've been doing it for 6 months, a year, 2 years. I was just on the phone with someone multiple years
Hmm.
trying to make ends meet in other ways, but she's still determined for how to wholesale. But it's I appreciate the persistence, but sometimes you feel bad because you're just like, we just need to like pivot you just a little bit kind of thing. So we're gonna dive into that.
Great.
But you were talking about, so back when you were younger, you did the mechanic thing, you got into the military, and then that transferred to real estate, or you transitioned to real estate. What's a lesson you learned from the mechanic days that has served you today in your success?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first started, I was making hourly rate as a mechanic. And you show up, you punch the clock. At the end of the day, you make what you make, guaranteed. Your hours worked is equal to, what you get paid. But I got an opportunity to go to a different mechanic shop. And this was a different pay structure where they pay you based on how many jobs you do during that time, what they call a
Mm,
flat rate mechanic. So, for example, let's say if I changed the brakes on a 2013 Honda Civic, maybe in the book it says you're going to get paid an hour labor. So the shop charges the person who owns the Honda an hour labor to get their brakes changed. And then they pay me a percentage of that. So let's say it's $100 that they're charging the customer for 1 hour of labor. They're going to pay me $25 for that labor to do that 1 hour job. But what happens in a flat rate mechanic is if I can do that job in 15 minutes, I still get that $25. So I figured out a way to be more efficient with my time. and be able to build systems and to get help. So there were guys there that were there to help the lead mechanics, and their job was to pull the tires off and make sure that the wheels were ready so that a mechanic like me can come in and I can get to work right away. So that helped me learn systems and to delegate. Hey, I need some help. I can't do this by myself. We pull the car in, pull it up on the rack, pull the tires off. So, that was one lesson. The other one was having the right tools for the job. So there was so many times where if you didn't have the right tool, that 2-hour job was going to take you 10 hours. So being able to invest in the right tools in that job was something that was really critical for me. And not to get too car mechanic geeked out, but there was a job on an intake manifold on a certain Chevy line of vehicles, and that paid 6.5 hours. I actually took an old wrench and I carved it into a new tool that didn't exist yet so that I could work on that part and have that done in less than a half an hour. So I was
Wow.
getting paid 6.5 hours for something that took me a half an hour to do. And so that was the other thing. But Frank, the most important lesson from my mechanics days, and specifically flat rate mechanic, is that I still only got $25. The shop got 75, and it was based on my effort. So that really taught me transitioning from an hourly rate to a flat rate mechanic was I get paid based on my effort. And I'm giving a lot of effort for this mechanic shop. What if I gave equal or more effort in my own business? And that was probably the most important lesson that I learned in the mechanics field.
Wow. And that worked out. And my son is actually a mechanic.
Oh, nice.
So I hear the stories all the time. A little
Yeah.
more specialized German cars, but it is very, it's amazing the technology in vehicles today.
I had no idea how smart mechanics are. There's some people with the electrical diagnostics and being able to just listen to a car. Hey, this is what needs to be done. There's some really, really smart guys out there. And there's a lot of similarities to that and real estate, like when a car comes in, it's in bad shape. After it leaves, it's in better shape than it came. And that's how it is when we flip houses too. You have this house that's in terrible shape, smelly, stinky, falling apart. And when you're done with it, it's transformed. And there's not a lot of jobs where you can that quickly see the impact of your efforts. So I see that similarity in those two jobs as well.
So I want to pick on wholesalers for a moment. And I know you wholesale, and
Okay.
I've wholesaled as well. So we both have the right to pick on wholesalers.
Yeah, some of them
But
deserve it.
but that I love the example you gave because again, my son being in that business has happened where he'll walk in with a car and it'll be one of ours that we have in the house, and he's like, "Dad, this car is making this sound. Did you notice it?" And of course, and I'm a car guy, but no, I didn't notice it. And so he'll take me out and he'll be like, "Listen," and I'll listen, and I'm like, and I'm literally like, "Am I just dumb? Like I'm not hearing what it like." But his ear is so fine tuned that he hears those little nuances that we don't otherwise, we're not listening for it.
Hmm.
With wholesalers, it's a lot of the same. Like when I put my buyer hat on, I get tons of deals from wholesalers. I'll have a conversation with someone I'm interested in. The vast majority of the time, the sense I get from them is they're not in tune with those details. Now, to some degree, I get it because a lot of wholesalers, they've never taken on the risk that goes with flipping or building or renting a house. I get it. But it creates this communication barrier. It's been there the entire time I've been investing 16 years. It's never changed. That gap is always there. How do you help wholesalers learn that these finer details will get more deals done?
Are you talking about in terms of what the house is worth at the end of the day when it's all fixed up and what it's going to take to get it fixed up?
All of the above.
All of those things. Yeah. So I try to take time with new wholesalers. One, because I remember what it was like when I didn't know anything. And I remember my first, oh, shoot moment where I had a conversation with one of the top real estate agents in Alaska. And he was selling houses left and right. And I said, hey, I need to add this guy to my buyers list. He's going to be able to connect me with some nice buyers. I didn't know how anything worked. I was that new. And I called him up and I said, hey, I'd love for you to come check out some of these houses I get under contract. And if you bring a buyer, I'll give you $500. And he said to me, he said, well, let me explain to you how real estate works. And I said, oh, shoot, even know what I had done yet. But what I had done was I offered to to pay a man $500 who was making 3% on minimum $300,000 houses when he sells them. So I didn't understand it. And I hung up the phone, and for 10 minutes I was like, what am I doing? Like, there's so much I don't know. But I think the biggest thing is to realize that this is a business just like any business. And so if you want to be good as a wholesaler, you have to know your buyers. At the end of the day, you have to listen to your buyers and understand what it is that makes them buy. For me, I try to be friends with the new wholesalers, and I know it's a pain in the butt because we hear the same BS over and over again, the same opening line. Hey, I've got a good deal. Okay, send it over. Well, what's your criteria? Okay, let's put the cart in front of the horse. You don't really have a deal. You just want to add me to your buyer's list. Um, I'll tell you what I'm looking for, but at the same time, while you're walking through some properties, if you have any questions, give me a call. Let's talk about it. I've bought a lot of deals over the years because I remember when somebody did that for me when I was making those phone calls early on too. I had a couple buyers that were smart enough. They weren't doing me any favors. They were doing themselves favors because not that many people are good at finding deals. And so they took a chance on me. Hey, maybe this kid knows how to find some good deals. I'm going to help invest a few minutes of my time to make him better. Because if he finds those good deals, he's going to remember me and send them back to me. So the angst or the frustration that comes from flippers, and I get it, we're busy as hell, is a lot of wholesalers, it feels like they're not willing to put in the time or the effort to get good at finding the product and knowing how to sell it to the buyers, product being the house. But there are some wholesalers that are good or on the path to being good, and they just need a little bit of help along the way. So that's kind of my advice to frustrated flippers and to also wholesalers that are listening. And if you're just starting out or been doing it for a while, get a buyer, a real buyer, and walk them through a property. Invite them to walk through a property with you. Hey, I've got this deal. You want to check it out? The numbers are a little bit too fat for me, or too skinny for me. I don't think that's something I'd be interested in. Huh? Everybody's saying that. I don't know why that is. Would you mind? I'll buy you a cup of coffee. You come walk this property and tell me what I'm missing. And if I can renegotiate the price, you'll be the first and only person I call. And I'd really appreciate it. I think that's how wholesalers can be better by tapping into people who have been doing it a lot longer than them and being able to see the houses and the markets through their eyes.
No, that's a good idea, and I even wrote that down. I was like, because I can certainly offer, because I get that probably every week. Can I get your buying criteria? So
Hmm.
just making that offer. Now, what about for virtual? Because virtual's blown up, right? 10 years ago, virtual was kind of like virtual wholesaling. What's that? Now it's like everyone's like, if you're a local wholesaler, they're like, really? So how do you take that advice and apply it in a virtual context?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's just people, and being able to connect with them. Being virtual is got a lot of benefits, but it's got some drawbacks too. Trust and connection are the two biggest drawbacks that I can think of. So being able to find a connection with somebody while you're not there, but always remember to frame things as the benefit to the other person. You're not asking for them to help you out. You want to help them out. Hey, if you can check out this property, tell me what's wrong with it. I can take that as ammunition back to the seller and negotiate the price down. The other thing that you can do with the buyers is that you can say, hey, I'd love to get an idea of what you're doing. Can I check out a couple of addresses of properties that you purchased recently? And me, virtual, I can just go online and I can see what the property was purchased for. I can see what it's listed for now or what it's sold for. And that helps me reverse engineer what price I need to be offering on houses to make it match what those buyers are paying for houses as well. So that's kind of a little virtual twist that you can do to it, but people that are local can do the same thing as well.
And that's such a great idea though to offer those examples because sometimes, I'm not say some, a lot of times, as a buyer, a wholesaler will call me and I'll be like, "What are you looking for?" Right, like you mentioned, and I will give them an example of a deal, a real deal that closed. I'm like, "Here's the address, you can look it up," just like you mentioned, and I tell them, "Here's what we bought it for. Here's what we put in. Here's what we sold." And then there's like silence on the phone because in their mind it's a grand slam. In our mind, it's not. It was just a good deal with low risk. But in their mind, it's like a grand slam. And I've noticed over the years that that threshold of ARV, after repair value, for our listeners that may not be familiar with the term, it keeps getting higher and higher, so the numbers get tighter and tighter. It used to be low, there used to be a wider threshold when I started in real estate, and that was 16 years ago. If I say the numbers I was thinking 16 years ago today, people are like, "Oh, you can't buy a house that cheap."
Yeah.
How do we get people back to this idea? How do you help people understand, as a wholesaler, you're not just selling a deal for profit, even though you are. Yes, you're helping to sell, you're doing those things. But it's a good idea to keep risk to a minimum for buyers, if at all possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I see a lot of wholesalers, they're trying to make grand slams on every single deal, and they don't realize that you can get a single or a double once in a while. You'll be sure to sell it, and then those buyers will be the ones reaching back out to you all the time. Hey, do you have something? Do you have something? Yeah, I think it's a mental block. Sometimes the wholesalers want to make more than the flippers, and it takes them having a couple deals that don't close to have the experience of, hey, maybe I need to tighten up my margins a bit.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about margin for a moment from a different perspective. You mentioned you were in Alaska and the houses were more expensive, so you started looking at remote for your first deals. So did you ever get to figure out the Alaska market?
Well, I bought a duplex there, and that worked out really well for me. We were early house hackers before that was a term, as far as I know. We lived on one side and rented out the other, and it paid for more than half of our mortgage. But as far as wholesaling and flipping, like a couple of years later, we sold that duplex and made uh, quite a big profit on it. The market had just skyrocketed. But no, I never got back to trying to figure out that market. You've got the ocean on one side and you've got the mountains on the other side. So Anchorage is the size that it is, and so inventory is low. So um, for whatever reason, that was my limited belief then, and I guess a part of me is the limited belief as well. But I've heard of people doing wholesales and flips there, and they make it work as well. I just didn't figure it out.
Well, some things come with time, right? We figure it out later. You set aside, go back. But the reason I wanted to ask that was because there's a lot of people I've heard say, "Oh, well, that works over there, but that won't work here."
Oh yeah.
So
Hmm.
it's that limiting belief. But then instead of you went remote, you solved the problem. A lot of people just, "I'm done."
Yeah.
That real estate thing, that works. And I have an instance, for example, of someone who I knew, a little bit of a smaller town in South Carolina. They actually did get a couple of deals done, but the market was just down the road a little bit. It was almost an hour away. And but then they did a marketing campaign and it's like, you know what? This real estate thing just doesn't work.
Right.
So, how do you help people push through? Because as investors, you talked about you had to push through to get the first deal. But for some people, they might do 10, 20, 50 deals and they still got to push through. The push through never really goes away.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. Yeah, I think it is a mindset. There are students that I've helped do deals in LA and San Fran, which is supposed to be an impossible market. There's people doing deals there every day. Wherever you think is too difficult, there are local investors that are buying houses and flipping them or holding them for rentals. I don't think there's any town in the United States where there's not a flip house or a rental house. Somebody's doing it and somebody figured it out. So, um, maybe reaching out to the people that are paving the way in your area. But as far as the push through, even today, there's days where it's like, man, this day went to hell, you know. This real estate thing is kind of crazy. There's got to be an overarching reason why us real estate investors put ourselves in these situations for some of these highs and these lows that we experience. You know, we'll hit a grand slam on a flip property, and then the next one will open up a wall and it's completely shot by termites or, whatever. So there's got to be a reason why we do this. And for me personally, it's because I can't imagine having a regular job. I
Mm,
can't imagine having to ask somebody else's permission to spend time with my family literally whenever I want. And that was the case when I was a mechanic, and every job I had is a 9 to 5. Hey, can I have permission to go to a doctor's appointment? And it never sat right with me to have to ask a human being a permission on what to do with my time. So for me, that's what drives me. But for somebody else, it's something different. It's taking care of their parents or, you know, being able to get out of a crazy situation. If you're doing okay, good enough, maybe you're not hungry enough for some of the things that are going to come. But I guess the biggest piece of advice is there's going to be hard times, guaranteed, and you're going to have different problems today that you're going to have a year or 5 years or 16 years down the road. You're going to have different problems, and just being able to be okay with that and know that there are solutions, and you're not the first person who had that hard time or had that problem, and there's a solution, and it just takes time. I think we have kind of a throwaway mentality. You look at the divorce rate and, people quitting their job and everybody saying that it's really hard to find good talent or good workers in the US and really across the world in some cases. And it's that throwaway mentality. Hey, this kind of sucks. I'm going to try something different. My grandfather, he was a tinkerer. He would find something on the side of the road that he saw some value in, and he would take it down to his basement and he would tinker with it until it was fixed. It was like, hey, Grandpa, what are you doing? And he was like, people don't see the value in this, but all it takes is a little bit of effort, and this can be fixed up and be useful for somebody. And I equate that lesson to a lot of things, and none less than, what we do for a job. It may be broken some days, but with a little bit of effort, anything could be fixed.
yeah, yeah. So that's a display of tenacity. It's that no quit mentality. And you really need that in real estate, is what I've learned is you got to have a no quit mentality. Unfortunately, in real estate, there's a lot of quitters. And one thing I've learned is you can have a no quit mentality, but that doesn't mean people won't quit on you. And the one thing I've learned consistently about people that quit on others is they've already mastered quitting on themselves. How do you help people understand this idea of no quit means literally no quit, like whatever it takes? Like a lot of people say it loosely, but when the fire's on, whatever it takes is living that is very different from saying it.
Yeah, I get that. You know, there's a lot of people that you want to take along and carry them with you and tell them snap out of it, or tell them, hey, you don't know that you are one or two decisions or steps into changing your life completely. You're right at the precipice. And a lot of people give up right at that point. I've seen it so many times in my life, Frank, where I felt like God was saying, like, do you really want this? And when I put my foot forward, things got easier. You know, it was getting hard, getting hard. Like, I'm not going away. I'm going to keep walking. And then it's like everything broke open and got easier. As far as pulling people along, you know, the best thing I can do is lead by example. You know, I want to try to be the furnace. You know, I got to make sure that I'm supplying the heat so everybody around me is warm. You know, I can't expect people to heat me who don't know how to produce that fire. And so I try to just be that furnace and radiate that towards others so they can see what the blueprint is and the example, because I am not special. I'm really not. I graduated next to last GPA wise in my high school. They used to let me sleep in class because at least if I was sleeping, I wasn't a distraction to the other students. I set the world, I set the school record for most detentions without getting expelled. So if I can do it, I'm sure you're probably smarter than me. You just have to be able to roll up your sleeves and do the work. That's it. There's no secret sauce other than you don't know the answer to this question. Get the answer to that question from somebody who you know has solved this problem and go on to the next problem as fast as you can.
Love it. Love it. So you got into wholesaling remotely, really from day one. You do it for several years and then you decide, let's move out of the country. Okay, probably didn't go exactly like that. But what was that like leading up to moving internationally? Like what even started that idea, which then grew into what it did?
That idea started at 8 years old, looking through my grandparents' National Geographic's magazine, and there was a spelunking picture in Australia. And there was some people that had this rope up top, caves that were only accessible from this rope. And I said, that doesn't look anything like Ohio. I want to know what that place is. So ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to be somewhere else. I wanted to see something different. And I thought that the Army would take me there. So I've been looking for a vehicle for a very long time. I joined the Army to see the world. They sent me to Kansas. Okay, that didn't quite get me there. Um, I went to college in Alaska, and I thought anthropology was going to allow me to travel the world and study indigenous groups, and that didn't work out. And so that was kind of on the back burner. But it was funny enough, I was teaching classes in Trinidad and Tobago. I was teaching real estate, and some students said, "Hey, what are you doing tonight? It's going to be Carnival in a couple weeks. We'd like to show you our town. It's our duty to show people who have never been here before what's great about Trinidad." And I just remember them showing me around and taking me underneath their wings, and it clicked. Like, this is what I've been trying to accomplish since I was 8, to see the world. And somehow, real estate in the United States was the vehicle to take me there. And it was like the biggest moment. And so that would have been 2015, 2016. Um, I was able to teach people how to do virtual wholesaling in Australia. And so the idea was, okay, I can do this remotely because I know that I've always done it remotely. And now I have the confidence that, like, this is the opportunity to travel and see the world. The idea was not to live abroad. The idea was to travel for a year, a working sabbatical, so to speak. And the idea was we were going to relocate in Australia, full circle from the 8-year-old boy's wanderlust. And I my family out there to Brisbane. We toured the schools and we made a plan. Okay, we're going to spend a year traveling and we're going to end up full circle around the globe and end up in Australia and settle in there. Um, 7 years later, we haven't made it back there because
So you're nowhere nearby right now.
we are not very far off from where we left 7 years ago, but the world is such an amazing place that we're taking our time, and that's no longer our goal anymore. We love where we are now. We found some place that we like better, and it's great. So the idea was always there to travel. The idea wasn't to live, and that was just by happenstance. But Frank, I was always doing remote deals, and the allure of spending pesos while earning dollars was very desirable to us. You know, the second we got to Guatemala, we lived in Guatemala for a period of time, and it cost us less than 20 bucks to get an entire family of six's groceries for the week. My monthly costs in the States were astronomical, and I cut those costs by about 60%, all while
Mm.
living in paradise and giving my kids an opportunity that I never had to see the world. So once I got that taste and my family was on board with it, we haven't looked back 7 years later.
So great segue, and I love that. Just, it's amazing the perspective our children have the more they see, for sure. But before you traveled, those of us that are real estate investors know that when we're married, husband or wife, either direction, usually takes a lot of buy-in from the spouse. And they're incredibly supportive, far more than we tend to give them credit for. And what was that like when your wife was like, "Are you sure, Chad?" Or was it like, "Let's do it," or "How do we convince the kids? I'm on board, but I don't know with the kid." Like, what was that like? Because that's a very real thing that we deal with as investors, especially when big changes coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember there being a conversation, several. I was planting seeds for years, if I'm being honest. But also, I'm super fortunate to have a wife that is ready at the drop of a dime to be game to do whatever, especially with travel and living abroad. Mind you, we had just bought our dream house, so to speak, in Kansas City less than a year prior, and we had made it our own. We spent six figures to renovate it and personalize it and make it our own. And 7, 8 months later, after that, we look at each other and like, I'm bored. She was like, yeah, me too. Okay. Here's this thing we put all of our effort and focus into building. We have it. We need something new. What are we going to do now? And so, yeah, just fortunate that our ideas aligned, but it wasn't like, hey, let's live out of the country for 7 years. It was like, hey, let's see what happens for 6 months, a year, and then revisit it. And so to her, she looked at it like it was an extended holiday, a little vacation, but it turned into much more.
Mm. Yeah, because now you're raising your kids remote for
Yes.
several years.
These kids picked up Spanish early on when we were living in the Spanish speaking countries. And then they made the transition to Portuguese relatively easy living here in Brazil and having that Spanish background. But yeah, picking up friends locally. 99% of their friends are local. They're not expats. They have a couple expat friends, but kids are just so open. First
Hmm.
of all, they're sponges with languages, but secondly, they're just so open to making friends and walking up and saying hi and introducing themselves. And that's something that's so admirable that I love. So I hear a lot of people say like, "Oh, I'll travel when the kids get older." No, this is the perfect time. This is the perfect time because the kids are just so open and receptive to new experiences.
Yeah,
I'm glad that we started when we did.
that's so awesome. So, what's one of the lessons you've learned living abroad these last few years that has served you well in business? that game-changing lesson, so to speak, if
The
there is
game
one.
changing lesson. Well, you can tell this isn't pre-scripted. I don't have anything prepared. Game changing lesson living abroad. I will say it's easier to run a business abroad than it is in person because you have to get good at delegating. And when you get good at delegating, you don't have a job anymore. You have a business, and the business can run without you. So that's one of the gifts of living virtually. And one of the lessons is like, I'm not going to, I didn't get a hot lead that I got to go drive to right now and check it out. Leaving my kids at the dinner table with the hot food there. Like, hey, daddy will be back. I got this opportunity. Um, I've really created a system that I rely on it to work without me, and it doesn't rely on me. So I'm just the overseer of it, and it works without me. And if I was local, and when I was local, I worked more than when I was a mechanic. I was doing tons of windshield time, and I was at every property and overseeing every renovation. And I got good at getting away from the grind I had built for myself, you know? So I'd say that's the biggest lesson that I can think of off the top of my head of living abroad and being virtual.
So this brings up an interesting question. If you're an investor and you're looking to pivot within your space, maybe you want to go from flips to rentals, rentals to wholesaling, whatever, or maybe you're new, could you argue then it's better perhaps to start remote versus local? Because when you said that, I was like, that's so true. Like we're doing a local renovation right now, and I'm definitely more tied to it. But then we're doing a remote one, it's all delegated. Guess which one takes more brain cycles? Like we all know, it's the local one.
Of course.
Could, I mean, is it safe to say that maybe by putting yourself in a position where you have to delegate, you could be more effective faster? Because you have to deal with limiting beliefs that, oh, when it's local, I don't have to deal with the belief. I'll just get in the car and drive over there, right? You know, oh, you need this. Oh, I'll be there in 5 minutes, right?
I love it. That's an interesting question. And I will say that my time in Anchorage actually sharpened my sword. So by the time that I went to a different market, my sword was already sharp and I was able to make an impact right away in a new market.
Mm.
I think there's invaluable lessons that somebody could have in their own backyard. And we also are our own worst enemies because we have it in our mind that we want to save money by spending our time. Hey, it's easy enough. I can just run down the road instead of like, there's probably somebody that can do that for me. There's no question when you're virtual, that's not even a thought that crosses your mind. Hey, I can go do that. If we can convince ourselves that our backyard is a virtual market, then we can have our cake and eat it too. We can delegate things. Hey, Frank's the guy, he doesn't show up on site. He's just not going to come. That's not what he does. He's got his time spent doing different things in the business that are a little bit more important. If you plant that seed, not only in your mind, but also in your team's mind, then you have the benefits of being virtual, things are delegated, and the benefits of being in your local market. You know, nobody knows that market like Frank, his market, right? Like you're there, you know the pockets, you know the roads. And so that's invaluable information. And you can kind of make yourself superhuman by taking over the mindset of like, I'm not the guy that goes and does this anymore.
Mm. So effectively convince yourself that your local market is also a remote market.
Yes, that's my suggestion.
You know, we both know wholesalers out there that have had a lot of success, that they run their staffs virtually, kind of piggybacking off of that thought. Even locally, I mean, we know one we're on a call yesterday where his assistant is halfway across the country from him. How like if we treat our market as remote, what do you suggest for people to take care of those few things that just have to be done locally?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a boots on the ground personnel that's needed. Whether you're a wholesaler and you need somebody to go get pictures of a property, or you have a 70-year-old seller who doesn't do email, so you need to get that contract signed in person, or you're a flipper and you need to make sure that your crews are on track and quality control. Um, you'll never be 100% virtual. You physically can be 100% virtual, but your business itself will still have a component of boots on the ground for sure. That's necessary. That being said, those types of operators and their helpers are pretty affordable to find. Um, for flippers, I've found some fantastic retired inspectors that love to be in houses, but don't love to be on the grind of their schedule that they had when they were doing full time. Those are some of the best. They have an eye for when something looks right and when it doesn't. And they're relatively inexpensive and happy to do the work. So as a flipper, that's a key role that I hire as a boots on the ground quality control. Go in there, get weekly pictures of my flip. Let me know how the project's going. Are the guys there? Are they not there? If we need it more than weekly, we'll do that. Hey, can you be there to get these utilities when they come on? Hey, we've got a delivery coming. Just these little things that are well below my pay grade and yours, Frank, as the owners of the business is definitely, something that somebody can do for 20 bucks an hour or less.
So it's 2025 now, right? We're halfway through 2025. The world of wholesaling has changed quite a bit in the last decade, for sure. Someone comes to you today and says, because you're coaching, right? And so let's talk about the coaching. You're coaching people virtually here in Brazil, right? By the way, do you coach people locally as well in real estate?
No, I don't do it locally. It's usually
Okay.
people that are tackling the US market in the US, maybe some other places, but no, I
Right.
haven't tapped into the Brazil. That's a good idea. I should look
We're
into
not
that.
flipping Rio just yet. We're getting there.
Not yet.
Fair enough. So wholesaler comes to you. There's wholesalers are constantly coming on the scene, constantly, right? It never ends. What do you think today? If someone wants to start wholesaling today, it's July 2025. What's working today to get them to that first check like you had when your wife brought you that check that first time?
Yeah.
What do you suggest today?
Well, it really depends on budget and availability. So there is effort marketing where it's just free. How can you find leads for free? And then there's paid. So I can say that there's free and there's fast. And it just depends on what your availability is to do either. But while the real estate game has changed as far as technology, the way information is shared, CRMs, AI, all of that stuff, the basics have not changed. You need to find somebody that's distressed, that needs a solution, and then pair them with somebody who is looking to buy a distressed property fast. Motivated sellers and motivated buyers. So, however many new nuances, fancy lists, different ways to get a hold of the sellers, the basics still exist. And it's something that we still do in my business all the time is we pick up the phone and we call one person. We still do that. We call one person, one at a time. Some people will call thousands in a day, and that works too. We'll call one person. Um, for somebody just starting out, it just takes one call. It may not be your first call. It may be the one after your first call. If it's not that one, it's certainly going to be one of the next calls after that. But how can you find somebody that needs to sell their house fast? And how can you approach them and offer them a solution that they haven't thought of yet? And this is one of the biggest things that blows people's minds is why don't they just list it with a real estate agent? Don't they know that they have a house? They could just list it on the market. For whatever reason, there is a segment of the population that just has no interest in putting the effort forth to sell this house. They're okay with it going into foreclosure. There's so many people. I missed it by weeks. The house that I'm marketing to, yep, the city got it. I look at it, yep, the county got it off of an auction. They didn't pay their taxes. Every week, the county's snatching up properties from people who didn't pay their taxes. They just didn't care enough to put forth the effort to rectify that, whether with a sale or with paying off the taxes. I don't know why. If I knew why people operated like that, I would make a lot more money than I do now. But just know that there is a niche market. 95% of the population of home sellers will not sell to us for a discount. We have to find that 5%, and then we need to be able to add value to them. If I'm local, I'm still love driving for dollars. If I'm virtual, I might pay somebody to do driving for dollars because however robust this game has gotten, there's people that are not doing the guerrilla marketing. There are people that are not driving the neighborhoods and asking the neighbors, hey, what's up with this eyesore? Yeah, such and such has it. They haven't done anything with it in years. Man, what a bummer. Do you happen to know their phone number? I can reach out to them and see if there's something I can do to help. Or that's the freeway. And there's lots of freeways. And then the paid way is start with a small marketing list. You can get marketing lists for cheap online and just dial. There's free skip tracing, there's paid skip tracing. So I would just say, figure out where the problem points are in the market, stressed homeowners, figure out how to make their lives easier, get rid of that headache for them, and pair it with buyers who are looking to increase their portfolio or flip more houses. It's really that simple. With how complicated these YouTube videos are and all of these programs, it's really as simple as that. And that's what I tell my students too. Let's take one step at a time and find success in this small piece, then we'll build on it. That's it. Just one step in front of the other.
So let's throw in the new elephant in the room and piggybacking off of that, and that's AI. Now you're seeing where people are pitching, for years it was VAs, VAs, VAs. Now it's AI, 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 AI. We've changed the two letters, right? Now you don't hear about VAs so much anymore. Now it's the computerized VA, the AI agent that does this, it does this, it does this, and that it'll text, it'll do. It's almost like there's a segment of people pushing this idea that to be a wholesaler, and I want to qualify that and say maybe directly, maybe indirectly, but it's this general idea that AI will just do everything and you'll just sit back and be like, well, I'm just collecting a check. The AI agents are doing everything. Are we painting a picture, we being, the real estate community, that's really not realistic?
Yeah, I think that anytime somebody says that there's an easy button to solve all these problems, one, if that's true, it's going to be oversaturated. And two, it's not true. What really is the success in this business, and I hope it is for the lifetime of real estate, is that it's a human relationship and connection business. That's my vision. That's what I know works for me, and I hope that it will always be like that. AI can make life easier in a lot of different ways. Um, but at the end of the day, hopping on a phone call with somebody who's going through a tough time and genuinely caring about what they have going on and offering a solution that may not even be selling to you, that pays dividends in spiritual currency and in your business because they're going to tell the next person, hey, Chad knows, offered some solutions. You should talk to him if you're having a hard time with your house too. And so that's something that AI will not do. So how can you look at your business and make it AI proof? but also take advantage of the tools when they come as well. It's a difficult road to try to walk, but that's kind of my vision for it.
Yeah, we're all still figuring it out. Incredibly powerful.
Yep.
But how do we incorporate it? Yeah, I mean, we're figuring it out, right? Step by step. One more question for you. After all these years, all helping all sorts of people in a variety of contexts, what's and it could be an investor, it could be a seller, it could be whoever. Who's somebody that you impacted? And you don't have to name by name, but just generally speaking, who's someone you impacted that when you were done helping them, it was like, this is why we do this, and it really, moved the needle for you.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is a student of mine. He was working through the city. In the wintertime, he was plowing roads. And in the summertime, he was, cutting grass on dilapidated city-owned properties and all this stuff. And now he runs a seven-figure business. And I will never forget the time where he said, "Hey, I'm really nervous. I'm going to be quitting my job." Quit his job, and about 3 months later, shared with me a check where one deal was equal to what he made that entire year
Mm,
working for the city. And seeing somebody go from nervous to, yeah, this is really working. I bet on myself. Um, that's definitely that's definitely one of the most impactful from a student perspective. Thinking about buyers and sellers, uh, man, there's been a lot of adventures in real estating. There's no shortage of real estate stories and things that we come across. There was a time where I was living in Kansas City and there was a house, and these three siblings inherited the house. And I was trying to find a solution for them because they still had a bank note to pay off, and the mortgage on it was kind of high for what the condition of the property was. So if they were to sell the house as it was, they probably would have to bring money to the closing table or break even. And so we structured a deal where I took that house on a contract for deed. And I said, let's partner up on this house together. You supply the house, I'll supply the labor, and we'll flip it together. Meaning, I do the work, they brought the house, and then when it sells, we make money together. And being able to offer a creative solution to a family that was considering just allowing this house to go into foreclosure. And
mm,
instead, I made money, they made money, and they got to see the house that they grew up in transformed so that a new family can make new memories in it as well. And
mm,
I'll never forget the impact that that made on them. So that was a story that I really enjoyed, an experience that I love to have been a part of.
mm. Always nice when we make the impact, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Always nice. Well, Chad, this has been delightful. I've really appreciated, and I've been taking a couple of notes here as we've been chatting, just the perspectives you've shared, and just you used the phrase limiting beliefs, and a lot of entrepreneurs, we've heard that phrase, but it's just a reminder of how easy it is for us to create those for ourselves without even realizing it. And that was just one of the things I was reminded of hearing you share today. So I want to thank you for sharing with us your wisdom today. And for our listeners, if you want to connect with Chad, first of all, he's still doing deals. So if you got a deal, he might be interested. So connect with him. But also, if you're looking for coaching in real estate, we'll have the link to his website. It's flipsforall.com. That'll be in the description. So we'll put that there. You can definitely connect with him on social media as well. So all those links will be there. So, Chad, I want to thank you again for taking the time to share with us today. Can you leave us with a final word?
Thanks, Frank. Yeah, this has been great. Thanks for the opportunity. And it's always great to have a conversation with you. And yeah, I guess the final word, especially since you were talking about limited beliefs, is whenever you're feeling doubtful about this business, is know that there are real people going through real situations and you have the solution for them. And if you don't step out of your comfort zone, they're not going to get the help they need. So go
Mm,
out there and try to make an impact, just one person at a time.
love it. Love it. Well, thank you again for sharing with us, and we'll definitely be continuing the conversation.
Thanks, Frank.